Okay, guys, let's get right into this. We can talk about my hair later. I want to talk about the Club Shay Shay interview with Amanda Seales. Guys, subscribe to my channel and let's get into this.
Crazy, the very first sin was a woman who ate. A woman who ate. She served and licked the plates. Crazy, the very first sin was a woman.
The first thing that really stood out to me in the interview was that the host, Shay Shay, was not listening to her. Like, and before we get to, you know, him invalidating her experiences and everything like that, and oftentimes we see that with Black men, when Black women talk about their experiences with racism and blah, 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 they invalidate them. She's especially invalidated because she shouldn't experience any problems. She's a pretty light-skinned woman, and everyone thinks that because of that, her closeness and proximity to whiteness saves her from having any sort of misfortune. And we know that's not true, but it's kind of reiterated even in how he was invalidating her. Nobody ever does that to Black men. Anything that they say is a racist situation, they know what they're talking about, and they are validated or at least listened to in some regard. But with Black women, it's very common, and especially with one who we see as someone who should have less problems, especially when it comes to racism. She's a light-skinned woman, she's pretty, she has like those kind of privileges going for her, and a lot of times when women have those privileges, they're not allowed to have problems. Like, and that's what I see over and over again. But anyway, from the very beginning, he was not listening to her. Like when she told the story about her childhood and how her mom had to go to the school because, you know, this teacher called her to principal's office because she corrected her in front of the class, right? And she said in there, you know, it's 3 Black people in there. The principal, obviously her. We confirmed that the teacher was a white person. So he goes on in the interview and later asks her about having a white mother when she clearly said more than one occasion that she had a Black mom. And I myself, I don't know why, but I always heard that she was biracial and assumed she had a white mom because I heard that she was biracial. And that was why so many people were bothered by her in what was supposed to be safe Black spaces, and that she was using her privileges as, you know, a biracial. Like, this is what I had heard about her. Never having known anything else about her, I assumed, okay, she could be a biracial woman. I don't know. You know, like I didn't have any issues either way. But those perceptions, especially light-skinned Black women, they don't even have to be biracial, but light-skinned, pretty much means that people automatically assume that you have privileges above everyone else, and that those privileges likely afforded you the reason why you are where you are. And her being in the business that she's in, of course, people are going to assume, okay, she's a light-skinned girl, she's going to get chosen first over a brown-skinned girl, and that's the only reason she's here. And the fact that she talks so confidently about her talent and that she deserves to be in the spaces that she's in is probably why people have a serious disconnect with her. And she's obviously talented because she wouldn't be where she is. She can sing, she can do, I mean, like, honestly, outside of Insecure, I had not seen her before. And then I did wonder why so many people had issues with her. And I just assumed, you know, okay, maybe there was a little bit of her biracialness that comes out. She's not, but that's what people have said. And I don't think he even explored a little bit of like those perceptions that people think this about her and how that potentially affects people's view of her when she shows up in spaces, especially like what's supposed to be Black spaces when she is technically just a Black woman as well, right? I thought the fact that he wasn't listening to her kind of set a tone for me that he would invalidate her experiences, because when men aren't listening to you, the next thing that they do is try and pick apart the things that you're talking about, the things that you are saying are happening to you, because they're not even listening. They're not listening. And I loved how she stood her ground and she explained to him why, even though he still didn't really get how he was invalidating her by telling her, well, maybe those kids were just being kids. I can tell you right now, living in Italy, around children who are being, groomed to be little racist in some instances, they mean with it. They know that it's mean. They know that it's mean to say these things because they see and feel the energy of meanness in the people who are teaching it to them. And they feel like they finally found somebody they can do that to. So they're like really excited about it as little kids when they finally find someone on their level that they can try and cause trauma to. They don't know it's causing trauma maybe, but they know it's mean. He did point out how a lot of times within Black spaces, we will accept someone like Candace Owens back into the fold. I won't. But she's being given platforms and spaces in places that are supposed to be for Black people when she has been one of the most awful human beings out there. And you know why that is? Why do Black people let these awful people back? And they mentioned it in the thing about the Bible, how like we've been raised to kind of like socialize, how Black Americans have been socialized to forgive some of the most awful things from people. But we especially are ready to do it when it has been validated by whiteness, like Candace Owens. Now, Candace Owens, however, has a whole different look about her, right? She looks very different than Amanda Seales, and that matters too. Those two things matter. Whereas they feel like Amanda can be validated in whiteness in a different way than Candace can. Candace got validated by being harmful to people who look like her. But she was validated, and now she's coming back, and now Black people are like, oh, we got to see what her story is. We have to hear what she's... No, we shouldn't. We should not be giving her a platform. That's a whole nother story. But I think that when they touch on these differences, and of course, Amanda Seales is not experiencing colorism or whatever, but she is experiencing that a thing within Blackness that we've also been socialized to do. And it's a weird dichotomy, I think, for Black Americans, because while you have this internalized desire to always have like white validation in some kind of way, you also want to reject that. And the thing that makes you see it, someone who looks biracial or whatever, where you can see the whiteness in them, you want to reject that. But someone like Candace Owens, who is actually harmful and awful about Black people in general and actually did real harm and tried to do real harm, is someone that is still being welcomed back and given a platform. It's amazing to me. And it just shows how they're trying to pull white people over, right? Like, that's the thing. And that validation. So I think it's an interesting dichotomy, and I'm glad they brought it up a little bit in her interview. And I like how she stood her ground, Angel Reese, and how this grown man handled it. But again, this Shay Shay was not listening to Amanda. He gave her a platform, he gave her some space, but he was not listening to her in many instances. And I don't think it was till the end, when they were getting into the Issa Rae and all of that sort of story, that he actually started to give her some validation and listen. But that's the tea, right? That was the tea that everybody was been waiting for. But I think that what Amanda Seales has experienced, what she goes through, and why she goes through it, is within the Black community. It's a microcosm in the overall attitude about why Black Americans at times can, they want this thing and then they want to reject it as well. The reason she has this problem is that within Blackness, no one ever wants to see the pretty women, the women that are going to be chosen over everyone else, like those kind of women. They don't want to see their problems because they feel like it might invalidate the experience of the rest of like regular Black folks, because if they're still having racism and their proximity to whiteness is so much closer than your own, you don't know how to validate them, and you don't want to give them the privilege of having both light-skinnedness and also the same struggles that you go through as a, you know, darker skinned person in this world. And I think that it's been really hard for Black Americans to really reconcile that. But the truth is, it's all a part of the experience. And like she said, she's lighter complected because of the atrocities that were done to the women in her family by slave owners and men who took advantage of their position in white privilege. So she can't be blamed for that as much as any of us can be blamed for what the skin that we're born in. But I do think that a lot of the visceral that comes for her is around the fact that she is a pretty woman who talks about her struggles, and she is actually properly intelligent, and everyone and she is no longer looking for outside validation of her talents, and everyone wants to humble women like that. Everyone wants to humble Black women, especially. So she's getting she's getting it from all ends. And I think it was very interesting for me, I think, because I haven't been that involved in her dramas and sagas, and I only really watched the video because they were likening it to Cat Williams telling his truth, and and people giving validation to him, and she getting the opposite kind of reaction still in her being real and telling her truth. And honestly, I felt like she came off brilliantly. But guys, I would love to hear your reactions to the Amanda Seales and Club Shay Shay interview. We'll talk in the comments, and subscribe to my channel. Ciao, ciao for now.